Okay.
I'm thirsty.
So, you know, when we were prepping for this conversation, one of the things you were talking about.
We did not prep.
We did not prep.
Totally fresh.
I'm lying. Yes. So one of the things we talked about was China. You'd recently been there, and you'd seen a lot of differences with the way people were using mobile devices. I think it's really fascinating because a lot of the stuff that came from China has started coming into the US. I mean, we've got microtransactions and all these things that 10 years ago we weren't doing at all here, right? So talk a little bit about kind of how you're seeing things going forward now and the stuff they're doing different from us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, just to start out, I need to sort of level set with everyone. So I'm Indian. You know, India and China have a very interesting history. Each one of us thinks we're better than the other. So this is a very hard conversation for me in many ways. So I was in China just a few weeks ago, and you know, it was not my first trip to China, but I was not just in Shanghai, but I went to, you know, one of the tier 2 cities, and I also met, you know, Alibaba and WeChat and a few other, you know, mobile players there and platform players there. And my gosh, was I both impressed and massively humbled. So just to give you some stats, and then I want to like double click onto WeChat specifically. So in China today, you know, Puneet was talking about India, which I think a lot of amazing, awesome stuff's happening in India, which I know, you know, well about being Indian. But in China today, you already have 600 million smartphone users. And probably by the end of next year, you'll have more smartphone users than is twice the US population. So just to put that in perspective right away, crazy huge numbers. There are approximately 4,000 mobile phone makers with 5,000 or 6,000 you know, different mobile devices. The cheapest smartphone costs $14. The most expensive one costs $3,500. This is a huge market with amazing innovations happening. But more than that, what I found is that there's something incredibly powerful and incredibly interesting happening with WeChat itself. And what I found really interesting is that Facebook and, you know, the rest of us out here, whether it's in the Bay Area or across the States, we're actually, it's sort of like the model's flipped. We're now looking and seeing what's happening in China and are copying those features and using that as inspiration for the mobile innovations that we do. So when you look at WeChat, you know, it started as a messaging platform, friends and family. It is now truly, you know, your single interface to your real life. So, you know, think of it as Airbnb, Uber, your Visa checkout payment system, like that plug there. You know, your messenger chatting, your merchant shopping, all of it sits in this one single environment. It has 500 million users. You can even, crazy, I never thought of this, you can even apply for a travel visa to Japan via WeChat itself.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know.
Can you get a marriage license and like even divorce through it too? You
know, I'm not certain, but I've heard something like that. It's actually quite possible. So crazy application usage across the board. It's a sort of one single interface anchored first in messaging, and that's a unique paradigm shift through which you can do anything and everything. And it crosses all generations, you know. So one of the folks on my team, you know, I was chatting with her, and she's from China, and she said, yeah, it's only the app my grandmom uses on her phone, and it's WeChat. Wow. So crazy stuff happening out there. And it's immensely inspirational for us.
And I would assume you suspect that stuff's going to start bleeding over into the US as well. I mean, Facebook's already trying with its messenger platform.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, just a few weeks ago, we as Visa ran a major forum for all our clients, and this was in DC, and there were 1,200 people in the room, a really big client forum. And you know, we had invited David Marcus from Facebook and Facebook Messenger to speak. And he actually used WeChat as an example to show the kind of things that they're going to start doing with Facebook Messenger. So yeah, it's absolutely, whether some folks admit it or not, you know, credit to him, he's open about it. We all have a lot to learn from China.
Yeah. So future of Facebook, look at WeChat. So
Messenger at the very least.
Messenger.
Yeah.
So when I think of Visa, I remember it's everywhere you want to be. And
Thank you.
It's hard to forget, right? But these days it feels like you're relying a lot on other people to market you, right? I mean, I feel like the most times I see a Visa logo are on cabs, and when I get a loyalty card and stuff like that. But it feels like the big brand campaigns have kind of gone by the wayside. Maybe you can talk a little bit about just kind of the thought process around a lot of this stuff now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so it's really interesting. I'd say, 2.5 years ago, we got a new CEO, and Charlie Scharf, and he came from Chase, and he really reoriented our business. So we're an interesting business. For those of you who don't know us well, we operate in something called the four-party model. All our revenue comes from the issuers who issue our cards. We don't issue cards ourselves. And the next most critical player in that ecosystem are the merchants who accept the cards. And in between, we sit. We're a payment network, we're the pipes through which money flows. And then you have the acquirers who put the terminals at the merchants. He said, look, our revenue comes from our issuers through these massive 5-10-year deals. We better make sure that we're servicing them well. So our business pivoted to that. That's the first.
So away from consumers, essentially, and toward the business partners and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a little less direct consumer marketing.
Right.
And arguably it's similar to Intel.
Yeah.
I can't go to a shop and buy, whether it's on Flipkart or at Best Buy.
Right.
I'm not buying an Intel chip.
Yeah, and there's no more dancing, bunny suit guys anymore.
No.
Yeah.
So that's one piece that happened. But at the same time, what we also saw is that when we do co-marketing, as we've done with a lot of merchants here in the States, through the launch of Visa Checkout, when we do it right, we get a lot of credit with the merchants. They love it because we're building their brand as we're building ours, and we did that with Gap and Pizza Hut and many others. But when we do it right, we're also still able to build our brand. So it's a double win. So from our perspective, hey, we're getting more bang for the buck in a media ecosystem where you have fragmented media devices, channels, platforms. People don't focus on anything. We do it this way. We take care of more people in the ecosystem. So it's actually serving us well.
So it looks like you're contributing to an advertising campaign by someone else, essentially. Is that how it works? You're supporting or bolstering it? Like, this is probably a bad example, but like when Apple is using, there's a music label that comes out, a new song, right? And they put it in one of their ads, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of helping them both, but Apple obviously paid for a lot of that.
Well, I'd say that it depends. And there are a lot of different ways you do it. So in some cases, we're the lead brand, and it's more anchored in, our brand personality and our brand attributes, like around security and convenience and access. In other cases, it's more in, the partner's brand, whether that's a Chase, a Bank of America, or a Gap, or a Pizza Hut. Having said that, we still do, some big, awesome direct marketing to consumers. We're just starting to ramp up for the Olympics next fall, and that'll be, you'll see a lot of wonderful Visa advertising. For those of you who saw the World Cup women's finals in Vancouver, I hope you all noticed Visa and Visa Checkout. So it's a mix.
It's still everywhere I want to be.
Still everywhere you want to be.
So one of the other things you brought up in our conversation was the startup competitions you guys are doing, right? So you did one in April, 400 startups. Talk a little bit about this.
Yeah. So, we're an interesting business. We've been around a pretty long time. We were introduced as a traditional business. And our core business model, is actually very strong. Payments is a very hard space to play in. Building a payment network is incredibly hard. Very few companies try to do that. But what we've also found, though, is that thanks to mobile especially, the way people do payments and the way they engage with brands and the way you have trust and security and convenience, it's all up in the air. It is a new world order, and we're in the early days of it. So what we discovered and felt was we have as much to learn from the startup ecosystem as anyone else. And those values, those ways of working, those ideas, that thinking, we want to bring into our business. So that takes two forms. One is all around payment innovation and technology, and we have a whole innovation team that does really good stuff around that. And then the other side is the way we talk to consumers and engage consumers. we realized needed to change as well. And that's where what we found is that through our marketing efforts, we basically compete with the Facebook newsfeed every day. And that's a huge challenge. I mean, I'm competing for your attention with, I don't know, your wife posting photos of your kids.
You're going to lose that.
I'm going to lose that. Your kids, I'm sure, are incredibly cute. But that's the reality of it. So with that in mind, we launched a startup competition, but we anchored it in our core business and marketing objectives. So this is not about wonderful, high-level experimentation or fancy ideas. We knew our 3 business priorities in the US market. We went to the startup ecosystem and said, these are problems. These are the users or the consumers we're trying to engage with. Come back to us with ideas, technologies, platform solutions, whatever it may be, to help us solve this. We thought we'd get around 100, 120 companies compete. We got 400 startups submit applications. It's called the Everywhere Initiative, and really, really interesting. Of those 400, 70% of them are mobile-based companies, which was a massive eye-opener for us. We're now looking at all of them. We're choosing finalists. We're going to run pilots with the winners. But even for the ones who don't win, the other 397, because there will be only 3 winners, we're going to learn a lot from them that we're then going to do things with in the ecosystem. And hopefully, as time passes, change our own culture as well, and the way we think and the speed we play at as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Well, are there any questions from the audience at all? Hands shoot up? No?
You guys have been kind to me today.
Well, here, I've got a question for you. So it feels like Android Pay and Apple Pay are going like crazy suddenly, right? I mean, we go from my digital wallet is nothing or it's extremely buggy and I can barely use it, and like Verizon and everyone's shutting it down, to suddenly it's everywhere, right? And I've got the logos on payment terminals, and Trader Joe's put one in. They revamped all of theirs just to make it work. And so what do you think of how quickly this is all just suddenly caught on? It feels like it went from nothing to full in a very short time.
Yeah. To answer that question, I'd like to ask the audience something. So how many of you, and just humor me with this, how many of you are familiar with Apple Pay? Raise your hands. Okay, everybody. How many of you are familiar with Android Pay? Raise your hands. There, you've got your stretching done for the afternoon. Now, how many of you know that Visa has had a role, a very critical role, in both Apple Pay and Android Pay? Probably a 5th or 6th of you. So that's arguably a marketing challenge for us. But what's really interesting is neither Android Pay nor Apple Pay would exist today without a technology that came out of Visa and then in partnership with a few other payment networks called tokenization. Just wouldn't exist. What tokenization enables is actually anyone, any platform, any mobile platform, to basically, in a really secure way, conduct credit card transactions. And using our rails and doing it in a way that as long as you have an NFC terminal, you're ready to go practically instantaneously. The interesting thing about that is through a Visa lens, what an Apple Pay is more the user experience level and a little less of the technology level, because that's integrating into our payment network. So from our standpoint, it's great. A lot of it's enabled through the amazing teams done out of our technology and our product teams, and we're going to see a lot more of it. The adoption curve will take time. Our role is to enable the ecosystem. We're going to allow and support as many players to play in it, and it's an exciting time. And the users will tell us who wins, how quickly adoption happens, and how smoothly it is.
So where does this go? Like, do I get to? I mean, my dream is that the wallet no longer sits in my pocket, right? Like I don't want a wallet, right? But it's forced on me.
Do you want to give me yours? I'll take it.
It's forced on me by society, right? I mean, there's only one person, the president, who gets to live without a wallet. So how do I get there? Like, what does it take to get everything out of my wallet?
Yeah. So I'd say that there are a few things there. So from a payment perspective, your mobile phone has to be able to, transact. And as I just alluded to, we have a lot of great progress in that direction. The second piece to it is you need to have merchants that accept the payments. And that's where, a market like Australia, which has PayWave and NFC terminals everywhere, adoption is a lot quicker. So for example, if you were living in Australia today, you'd have a much greater likelihood of being able to run your life normally without carrying a wallet.
Well, in Japan too, right? In Hong Kong, they have the octopus cards.
Yes, absolutely. Here, unfortunately, it's going to take a little longer.
Is that because we're just stuffy, silly people?
Gosh, I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am.
But that's the second piece, the merchant terminals. And then the third piece is quite simply marketing and education. And, our marketers in Australia, for example, for a number of years have invested a lot in marketing PayWave. And it's been incredibly successful. You have a crazy percentage of transactions, of all credit card transactions being PayWave NFC transactions. So when Apple Pay comes around, or Android Pay, or Samsung Pay, or whoever Pay, adoption is going to be instantaneous nearly. Yeah. Whereas here, it's going to be a long journey. So those are really the three parts. And in some ways, the marketing and the education is actually the hardest.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to give Apple and Google credit for pushing the marketing end of it, right? I mean, they've done a very successful job there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Yes, finally.
Hey, I was curious if you guys could tell us a bit more about the acquisition of TrialPay. So regarding to mobile, what's the actual plan to work together with Visa?
Yeah, so I'm actually not the best person to talk to that. So I'm in the marketing function. The acquisition was, a product-driven acquisition. And we actually don't have much to share publicly at this point, but we're figuring out how to do more for our merchants, and it fits into that piece as well. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Over here. Just a second, they're getting a microphone to you.
Since you just came back from China, do you know the progress of China Mobile's launch of the NFC payment system and how it's progressing? And are we seeing some higher adoption rates in China?
Yeah. One sec. So are you referring to China opening up?
I'm referring to in 2013, China Mobile and China UnitPay announced an NFC enabled wallet.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of hype about it, and I was just wondering how that progressed.
Yeah. I wasn't that close to those conversations on this trip, so actually I can't talk to that piece. Yeah. I was more focused on, looking at the consumer adoption and usage of mobile, and then we have our own mobile marketing efforts, and Visa Explore, I was looking at that.
There was
from a marketing end.
I have a question. So companies like Uber, you don't even have to bring your wallet or NFC or anything of that sort. How do they get around bypassing all of the need for any kind of hardware whatsoever? And do you see that as potentially a future for payments in general?
Yeah. I mean, I think Uber works awesome, and I love the way it works. And just this weekend, I actually did a trip down to LA just for a wedding, and I actually didn't have to take out my wallet at all, just except at the airport to show my ID.
I was going to say, you need that.
Yeah, that I did need. That's all about card on file. So once you add your card on file, into Uber, just as you do into iTunes or elsewhere, and you can verify it, with your Uber password or whatever mechanism that they have going. You don't need to be entering your card details again and again. We love that. It creates for a much more seamless end-user experience, as long as the card on file is a Visa branded card. If it's not a Visa branded card, You
don't like it at all.
We don't like it. We think it's horrible. Yeah. And neither do our issuers like it. And that's, as payments go more mobile and more digitally centric, a big effort is how do you do the marketing when you bring a new card into the marketplace so that everyone updates the card on file?
Right.
Because once you set it, you're not changing it. I mean, if we were to do a poll here, half of us probably wouldn't remember what card on file we have for Uber.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where it's such an exciting time. It's also changing the role of marketing.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to payments, what is it that we specifically market? Getting people to use cards, getting people to put a certain card on file, getting people to understand how NFC works, getting people to take advantage of the offers, all of those things together.
And Visa's winning on every end of one of those each time.
I didn't
We'll
pay
leave it
you
at
to
that.
say that, but
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. A lot of great teams at Visa do a lot of amazing work.
All right. Well, thank you for the time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just,
we're out of time, but
one quick question. You just mentioned you visited China. Actually, I'm a CEO of Aloha, a subsidiary of Alibaba. What do you think about Alipay? Is that a friend or foe for Visa?
Ooh, what a question. So I'd say I'm not the best person to answer that. That's more of a strategy product question. But hey, I'll say the way I started the conversation, I was very impressed with Alibaba, very impressed with Alipay. I mean, I look at it from a consumer usage and adoption perspective. I think it's awesome. You guys are doing awesome stuff. Yeah, I think it's great.
there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.